Hello everyone, it's the hardcore legend Mick Foley wishing a nice day to everyone there, right there at True Heel Heat. Yeah!
Hey guys, this is Dan Rosa and welcome to True Heel Heat.
Yo, what up? You know what it is. It's your boy AJ Francis reporting to you live from New York City, the birthplace of hip-hop. And I'm telling you that I'm only tuned in with True Heel Heat Wrestling. Holla at me.
Rob Van Dam, listen to True Heel Heat. Pow!
Hello. It is me, your True Hill Phenom SP3. We are live on the True Hill Heat YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for our Dark Side of the Ring Season 6, Episode 2, Ludvig Borga, Hellraiser from Helsinki. Review. Had to clear my voice right there because we got a lot to talk about from last week's episode 2 of season 6. Y'all know the deal. Welcome everyone. If you're joining us live, appreciate y'all. If you're watching us on demand, we are here for another Dark Side of the Ring review here on True Hill Heat. It is me. I am on my own. I am lonesome. Miss Chrissy Love is going to be on vacation. She should be taking off shortly. So I'll be doing reviews for Dark Side of the Ring and Power Book 3 Raising Kanan today over on our second channel, all by my lonesome, riding solo. So you guys are my co-hosts on today's show. So I appreciate y'all if you're joining us live. Appreciate y'all even still if you're watching us on demand. Remember to show your appreciation back. The simplest way possible is by dropping the thumbs up on this video. You can also share this video with all your wrestling fans, friends, and family on all your favorite social media platforms. If you're new to the True Heel Heat YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to stay notified for all the great content here. We have done reviews for every single episode of Dark Side of the Ring. I think we're the only YouTube channel that does that. Does live, usually live like this today. Usually live reviews of Dark Side of the Ring dating back to season 1. We started in season 2. We went back to season 1. We've done season 3, season 4, season 5, and now we're here for season 6 of Dark Side of the Ring. We were a week late, but we're getting you with 2 reviews this week. First, Ludvig Borga, Hellraiser from Helsinki, and then Big Van Vader. We're going to be doing that review on Sunday. It will be me and Jay News joining you for that, since Jay News is a huge New Japan fan and a huge fan of Big Van Vader. He's going to be joining me for that one. But we're here for some Dark Side of the Ring goodness. Appreciate y'all. If you're in the live chat with us, remember to sound off in the live chat. Love to interact with all of you guys. Hear your thoughts on episode 2. Ludvig Borga, Hellraiser from Helsinki. Ludvig Kaiser is a much nicer person who doesn't go into your DMs. Ludvig Borga is apparently a Nazi. I don't know how better way to say that, but we got a lot to discuss from this episode. So sound off in the live chat, interact with us here. And of course, if you're feeling generous, you want to give back to what we do here, you want to show your support to the True Heel Heat YouTube channel and our Dark Side of the Ring reviews, you can do so with a super chat donation. Any dollar amount matters. It goes back to the contributors that you see on screen with us here. A lot of the contributions that you give for our Dark Side of the Ring reviews go right back into the channel, so we can get better mics, we can get better content out there for y'all to enjoy. So appreciate y'all for that. We got Goku in the chat joining us today saying, what's good, True Heel? Yes, True Heel, solo dolo. So you just say True Heel. Correct pronunciation. He says, Goku says, this has to be one of the darkest yet funniest episodes of the series. Just 2 words, exit only. Yeah, that was probably the funniest part of this whole episode here. My missus was like, I'm not watching this. She knows enough about Ludvig Borga from her time watching WWF back in the early 90s, so she did not want to watch this one with me, but she knew a lot of this already, which I was blown away by a lot of this content. I just remembered, as I kind of give you my background on what I knew about Ludvig Borga. I just strictly knew of his time in 1993 in WWF. His rivalry with Lex Luger. It was around like the fall time of WWF in that time, where he came in. He was a very muscular individual, and he had the look of like a real villain. So he worked well against our American hero Lex Luger at the time. But that was literally all that I knew about Ludvig Borga. I learned a lot from this episode here. So I do like the Dark Side of the Ring episodes where I don't know that much on the subject. I like when I'm familiar with the subject, but I don't know that much, so I can learn something about them. And boy, oh boy, did I learn some stuff about Ludvig Borga here. So we're going to get into it. Sound off with your thoughts. What was your knowledge of Ludvig Borga before this episode? And did you learn anything new about this interesting human being? We're going to start off. The episode starts off with a warning. The following episode contains content about suicide and suicide ideation. Viewers' discretion is advised. In the summer of 1993, Ludvig Borga made his WWF debut. Jim Cornette is one of our talking heads, one of our favorites here on the channel when it comes to Dark Side of the Ring reviews. Not so much his other podcast content, but Dark Side of the Ring, he's always a great person to have on, because Jim Cornette, for better or worse, is a wrestling historian. So he knows a lot of stories, and he worked in WWF around the time Ludvig Borga was there. Jim Cornette is up first, and he talks about the long used foreign heel gimmick in pro wrestling. Cornette was in the WWF for Tony Hamill's debut as Ludvig Borga. Cornette says that Vince loved the foreign heel gimmick so much that if we didn't have a problem with a country, he would figure one out. That's a great thing to say about Vince McMahon. That just tells you so much about Vince McMahon if you did not have a lot of knowledge about him. So Ludwig had an accent and thus was a foreign menace from Finland. Jim Ross is actually our next talking head, and he says one way to get a villain notice is to have them break a streak. So they bring up that Ludvig Borga was brought into the WWF. He was a muscular, fierce-looking competitor, and they give us Tatanka, and Tatanka's actually here to talk about it. So that was great. I popped for seeing Tatanka here. Tatanka notes that he had an undefeated streak for 2 years. He was told they wanted to do something big for Borga. Tatanka talks about giving the rub and how if you rub shoulders with Hulk Hogan, it takes you up a higher level. Beating Tatanka is the same as beating Hulk Hogan, apparently, to Tatanka. I mean, that's an interesting comparison. That's all I will say. Very interesting. Ludwig ends Tatanka's 2-year winning streak and pins him with one finger. He says it put Ludwig at the top of the pecking order. Tatanka tells the producer, looking at it now, Ludwig wasn't the right guy to end his streak. I mean, in retrospect, after everything we learned in this episode, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe Tatanka is onto something, even though he did compare himself to Hulk Hogan. Not the person I would want to compare myself to, but to each his own. He mentions Ludwig was never the guy to get close to the boys. JR notes that he had a great look, but was a miserable human being, and he made people around him uncomfortable. Jim Ross says, and I quote, no, Cornette, Jim Ross says, and I quote, when we realized he had the the SS tattoo on his calf, things started going downhill from there. Cornette gives a history lessons that the SS being Hitler's private army who carried out a lot of his orders and atrocities. Jim Ross says, and I quote, we made a mistake in hiring him. He slipped by us. He says it wasn't done on purpose, and it brings up the reaction of the Jewish talent to this SS tattoo because of Hitler's history with the Jewish community. Cornette mentioned earlier that they had him cover it as much as possible because it was obvious it would not sit right with the boys. Cornette says that the fact that he had it was a sign of something was wrong upstairs. Tony came from a broken home and his parents divorced when he was just 2 years old. Both his parents had drinking problems, and we meet Miko Martin, who is a journalist and a writer of Tony's biography. Tony's mom was a Swedish speaker and put the boys in a Swedish-speaking school. That made Tony feel like an outsider. Next, we get Christar Markusis, a childhood friend of Tony. And we get subtitles for him because he doesn't speak English. So that means a lot of pausing for me to actually take notes on this one. So it's okay. I like the subtitles because it's easy to write down there. Sometimes I don't get what the people are saying even when they're speaking with no subtitles. So I like subtitles. He says that the local people shunned them because they were Finno Swedish and their kind were usually lived in the suburbs. He says, and I quote, when you were a Finno Swedish, people thought that you were, how can I explain it discreetly? That you were a F word. Rhymes with maggot. Won't be saying that here. I learned my lesson from Mickey Rourke on Celebrity Big Brother. But the F word that rhymes with maggot, not the one that rhymes with muck. I think that's the best way I can explain it. We got Koku, who says the vase story was wild. It was. We're gonna get into that. We got Greg Carter the second, who says they were too many people comfortable with him being a Nazi. Yeah, yeah. I don't know how I would feel about that. Dark Side of the Ring. Goku says Dark Side of the Ring, starting with a warning. You know this is about to be some serious shit. Absolutely. We talk about serious shit every week on Dark Side of the Ring. When there's a viewer discretion is advised, you know this person is going to be offensive. And in words like the F word that rhymes with maggot is one of the things that is going to be offensive to a lot of people. Goku says Tatanka equals Terry from Florida. Terrence from Florida. I don't know about that, brother. I don't know. That doesn't work for me, brother. Power Jerry Finisher. I think he's talking about the Mickey Rourke. Man, Mickey Rourke on Celebrity Big Brother. He is offensive. He is sometimes vile. And he probably has not been around another human being in quite some time. I say all of that to say I'm voting for him to stay on Celebrity Big Brother because he is entertaining. At least I like my reality television as entertaining as possible. It is what it is. Sofa Kid is here saying SP3, the hardest working people. PI, yes, thank you, podcaster. I was gonna say I'm a hardworking PI. Let's go. I do my investigation. I'm doing my investigation right now. Sofa Kid saying podcaster. Thank you so much, Sofa Kid. I appreciate the support and I appreciate those kind words. I try my best to work as hard as possible. This was probably going to be my day off, but I was too behind on Dark Side of the Ring, and I know this channel, the community on this channel loves the Dark Side of the Ring review, so had to bring it back. I couldn't fall too far behind on Dark Side. Damn, SP3. I mean, I like my reality television entertaining. My missus has already downloaded the app for Celebrity Big Brother, and she is already voting to vote out Michael instead of Mickey. She wants Mickey to stay on because she is entertained by him as well. The scene where Mickey makes fun of Patsy's cooking is an all-time reality television moment. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go on whatever social media you have and put in the search bar Mickey Rourke and Patsy. If you look at it, as soon as you get it, you'll in whatever the first clip is, watch that. You will be dying laughing. It's hilarious. Goku says Ludvig would be good friends with the Harris brothers with their matching tattoos. They got to do one on the Harris brothers, right, Goku? They got to do one on them. We get old audio of Tony from 2003. He talks about his mom choosing the bottle over her sons, and he left home at 14, 15 years old. Tony moved to Krister's place and started taking up boxing and other combat sports. Tony constructed a persona for himself called the Viking, and this was years before he became a pro wrestler, so he tattooed Viking on his arm and would get into bar fights and street fights with Krister by his side. He loved movies and was a big fan of Taxi Driver, the movie. That movie made him decide that he would move to the United States one day. And I didn't even know that he was an actor as well. Like, I did not know that. And he's been in movies that I've seen before. He moves to LA in 1986, and there he meets his ex-wife, Dee Dee. She says Tony was larger than life, and she fell in love with him quickly. Tony wanted to be a movie star in America, and he headed to Go's Gym in Venice and wanted to be a bodybuilder. But she notes that he didn't have the shape and he had a big belly. Don't worry, Tony. I know how you feel. I got a big belly too. I got a big belly. It's just natural. My dad had a big belly. I don't think his dad had a big belly, but my dad had a big belly, and I think I inherited the big belly, so I understand. I tried to work out, still couldn't get rid of the big belly, but I did get abs on top of the big belly, which look weird, so it happens to the best of us. Now it's just I don't work out as much because I have 2 kids, and they keep me busy enough, and then I'm always on here talking to y'all or writing, so it's hard out here. It's hard out here. Got to get back into the gym work though. Tony then basically he started taking steroids because of he wanted to be a bodybuilder, wanted his body to get bigger. They came in packages from Russia, One of the packages was labeled as being for horses. I don't think you're supposed to be taking those type of steroids, Tony. He did get some small roles in movies, and we see him as the new WKRP in Cincinnati from 1992. People in the gym told him that he should get into pro wrestling. That leads him to the UWF and Herb Abrams, which we have done the review. Check it out on our playlist. It's on the homepage. We've done Herb Abrams. What a guy. What a guy. So he starts working, and Tony basically gets his big break in Japan as the Viking, because that was who he was in UWF. Tony lied to everyone that he was a boxer, but he never had a boxing match in his life. Japan loves their giant monsters, and Tony fit right in. We see him in a match with Big Van Vader, who would be the subject of the episode 3. He became a star in Japan, as they know how tough wrestling can be in Japan, and that leads to him taking painkillers and developing a painkiller addiction. Michael Mandrati is next, and he is the founder of Slam Wrestling Finland. He tells us that Tony would speak about himself like he knew he was going to be somebody. But Michael would tell him that you have to realize who else may be in the room. Tony had a lot of friends that were skinheads, and he had sympathies towards the white brotherhood. I don't think he's going to like that I'm talking about him this way. The wrong thing came out of his mouth, and he got into a fight with Scott Norton, which is someone you don't want to get in a fight with. Not of all people, Scott Norton, who had enough of his ethnic slurs. Michael says that it was Judgment Day. Probably the next best idea. It's not the best idea to mess with Scott Norton. I don't think so. I don't think it's the best idea to mess with Scott Norton at all, or to piss Scott Norton off. That is the last thing you should ever do. Back to the incident with Norton. Nobody knows the story, as each side says they controlled things and won, but that was the end of Tony in Japan, though, and he went back to California. His ex-wife says that she overlooked a lot of things, but then Tony cheated on her, and she knew the kind of person he was. She still loved him, but didn't want to be with him anymore. Tony became emotional, and she filed for divorce, and he told her he would drive his truck off a pier. This is where the suicide ideation comes in. It's a disease, honestly, when you have those suicidal thoughts or you say things like that. So this is like that's why I said that's why I read the warning beforehand, because this is a sensitive subject for anyone who is dealing with that. Our DMs are always open if you need someone to talk to, because that's a serious thing that you have to deal with. She says, as soon as we split up, that's when he became Ludvig Borga. So Tony enters the WWF in 1993, and his run lasts less than a year. He was pushed like crazy, as he was supposed to be a top star, the top heel, to go up against Lex Luger. They talk about how rough his promos were, and he would speak half English, half Finnish. Someone points out a lot of people in the US can't find Finland on a map and have no clue why someone from Finland would be threatening to them. I mean, I'll be honest. When I was young, I was scared of Ludvig Borga. He looked like someone that was a villain in WWF at that time. JR says that Tony lacked the ability to connect with an audience, and then they went back to the SS tattoo. His ex-wife says that he got the tattoo because it got him attention, and he was fascinated by Nazis. Let that marinate for a minute. He was fascinated by Nazis. I've heard a lot of things about Nazis. I have not heard a lot of people say they're fascinated by them. Teach his own. She continues that he spent time in Russia and came back with memorabilia and had a creamer pitcher that had a swastika on the bottom, and it was dated 1941. She used it as a flower pot as she was naive and didn't shit from chalut at that age. I don't even know what that means, but I read it out because that's what she said. Here we go, and we go find this clip as Cornette's delivery is something. The ex-wife questions why someone would get a and and they talk about his tattoo, which Goku brought up earlier, where he gets a tattoo above his ass that says "Exit Only." Cornette mentions, what the fuck would propel a man to tattoo "Exit Only" above his asshole? We see photos of the tattoo as well, which I'm just like, really? This is really a thing. This is really a thing that this man had. This just is the definition that I think the tattoo is the best thing to talk about when it comes to Ludvig Borga. They should have led with the tattoo, honestly. Honestly, like, what are we talking about? Tatanka losing his winning streak and him comparing himself to Hulk Hogan. We should just talk about the tattoo. The size of this thing and what it looks like. It's like, do you really need written instructions for people not to fuck you in the ass? Does there have to be a written warning, says Cornette. He finishes by saying, you are so anti-homosexual that you have "exit only" tattooed above your asshole. Who's going to know? Don't fuck him in the ass. Yo, yes. It's one, it's a sign of his insecurity. Two, it's a sign of his mental state. It's also a sign of his mental state. This man is not right in the head whatsoever. We got Goku, who said always a bar or gym, always the place of wrestlers' origin stories. Yeah, that is very true. That is very true. He also says, why would you try to fight Scott Norton? Dude is a unit. Dude is he's a beast. And every story I've heard about Scott Norton, he has like the reputation that's probably the closest behind Ming, aka Haku, as far as one of the toughest individuals that's ever walked into pro wrestling ever. So that was a bad idea to fight with him. Great Curtis second says that he was either that homophobic or closeted gay. The latter. Probably the latter. Power Drive Finisher says, really needed to let folks know that he's a straight man. Yes, because nothing says you're a straight man like "exit only" above your asshole. Tony gets injured, unfortunately, or fortunately for some of y'all. He gets injured in a match at Madison Square Garden, and that dropped him off the show, and nobody missed him. Jim Ross says, I am glad he didn't get hired on my watch. He was gone from WWF and went off the rails. So as quickly as he rose to power, got an action figure, was a top heel in the promotion, it was all gone that quick after the injury in MSG. He decided to hit up the UFC and doesn't take it that seriously. So his first match in the UFC is against Randy Couture, who is also having his first match. Oh man, that had to suck. And it's not going to work out well for Ludvig Borga if you watch this episode. He washes Ludwig easily, does Randy Couture. We get the footage, and he charges, and Randy takes him down rather easily. The SS tattoo is clearly visible as well during this matchup because of the attire that he's wearing. Tony told people that he would never tap out and would rather die, but he gets choked out and taps in 1 minute, and that's the end of his MMA career. Grand opening, grand closing. Tony goes back to Los Angeles, and his house gets raided by the police. He was charged with trafficking, controlled substances, steroids, and possession of illegal firearms. Tony loved guns because they gave him power. He was in prison and people recognized him as Ludvig Borga. So his fame got him recognized. I guess all the inmates were asking for autographs. I don't know if that's the thing, but they took him in and he was deported to Finland. Tony took his going back to Finland hard and still wanted to be famous. So he joined Finland's version of American Gladiators. I guess you can call it Finland Gladiators. He was a character by the name of Viking, once again known as Vinkiki. We meet Marianne Taga, who was a friend and a colleague. She was one of the female gladiators, and they became fast friends. She says that Tony was in his element, and this was the Tony that he wanted to be. Next, he recorded a song in Finland that sold well, as it was him bragging about having testosterone and being a Viking and Mountain of Steel. This is crazy. His whole life story is quite fascinating. It's quite story. This is a good choice. Just when we were like, we said on the season premiere with Mick Foley, Hell in a Cell, it felt like Dark Side of the Ring was running out of stuff. But if you had this guy in the chamber, this guy's had a fascinating life altogether. He is now one of the most famous people in Finland and was a superhuman to the people there. He went on to do Die Hard with a Vengeance, and we see him in the movie opposite Samuel L. Jackson. I was blown away by this. It was a small role as a good guy, but they went. It was basically a small role in the movie, but it went crazy. People went crazy for it in Finland. So Tony is once again famous in his home country. Next, he wrote a book and made up a lot of the stories, and they were offensive. A lot of people hated him, but there were many who bought into his ideas of how men and women should act. We meet Vinko Balin, a former advisor and business partner of Tony. They met him when Vinko's company was making a protein shake that was catered to large, muscular men. This led to Tony getting into politics, and they were trying to find him a party, and he decided to mention a kind of Nazi party. I've had to pause way too many times about this guy so far. Vinko notes that there isn't any kind of support for those kinds of elites in Finland. That's good to know. We then meet Timo Sani, former True Finns party leader next, and he was the leader of the small party that was struggling at the time. They built Tony his own website, and we go back to the SS tattoo. There's going to be so many mentions of the SS tattoo and exit only tattoos, I think, from here on out, whenever Ludvig Borga gets brought up. The Cold War ended and Finland had changed. There was also a recession, and immigrants became scapegoats for troubles the country had. The country wanted to take care of their own before anyone else, and Tony had charisma when dealing with people. Someone mentions that there are so many parallels between pro wrestling and politics. And boy, do we know in the United States, huh? WWE Hall of Famer getting his second term after he lost another fucking election. Pro wrestling. That's basically what politics has become in the United States. It's just pro wrestling. There's heels, there's faces. Sometimes the heels get popular, and they're popular heels like Trump. And here we are. I don't want to get kicked off the YouTube, so I'll just keep it there. Goku says Jim Ross is I didn't hire him, thank God. Goku also says, dude was a wrestler, UFC fighter, Viking music artist, author, racist, Nazi, homophobe, politician. He has a whole resume of descriptions. This is one of the most fascinating episodes of Dark Side of the Ring. It is funny, it's dark, it's a lot of vile stuff that he said and probably believed in. Oh man. Power Driver Finisher says, I loved American Gladiators when it came back on in the mid 2000s. There was a guy that would howl, and I guess it reminded me of wrestling. American Gladiators 100% reminded me of pro wrestling. American Gladiators, and there used to be a show, I don't know if y'all ever seen it, but it was very big in New York because it was on our like syndicated basic cable channels. It was called Battle Dome, and that was the first time I saw Terry Crews. And I think Battle Dome had a partnership at one time with WCW, because they did crossovers where WCW wrestlers like Rick Steiner was on Battle Dome, and then Battle Dome wrestlers were on Battle Dome performers were on WCW. So Battle Dome, American Gladiators. I'm with you. It did remind me of pro wrestling a lot. And yes, Goku. He says, fun fact: Rico was a American Gladiator. That is not surprising at all. We get Timo, who they like you said, he built them the website, and then Tony had no time for political correctness and didn't care if the things that he said were true. It seems that he called their president at the time a lesbian, and they thought that that would cut that out, but it was a live interview, so everyone saw it. This is wild, as he would go on rants about immigrants increasing crime in Finland, and his racist jokes would sometimes do well with his audience, so he would lean into them even more. We see an old interview talking about baboons, and he still believes in democracy. Election day comes, and he wins a spot in parliament in Helsinki by a landslide. Jesus fucking Christ. Timo says everything went well until Tony got elected for parliament. I mean, this is going well. I mean, it's going well for him, I guess, because he got elected to parliament, but I don't know if everything is going well in this story. Tony ran on national pride and won in a landslide. People voted for him in mass. Cornette says that he would buy someone telling him that Tony would be a nationalist, right-wing lunatic, but wouldn't have bought him being a politician. His advisors were asking him to tone things down, but he always said out loud what other people only thought. He was viewed as a white supremacist. We see an interview he did with a reporter's eye looking on in disbelief, as Tony says, and I quote, "If you call me a Nazi or something else, it's a bit different than calling me, I guess, a nigga or or a nigga." Yes. History notes that Tony told him the important thing was that he was always in the headlines. Tony continued in the interview, "I am totally sure that every single one of the 90 Jews would have preferred to lick someone's ass than be gas chambered." Yo, the reporter's face was just in complete shock. It was completely aghast. It was ridiculous. He had a new wife at that time, and things were well financially. From the outside, things looked good, but there was a lot of trauma for Tony. He had become an alcoholic on top of his drug problem. He had a house full of mixture of drugs and hormones, and would take them around the clock. He would tell friends that life was chemistry. Then in 2003, his substance abuse was impossible to ignore. People started resigning because they had enough. Tony promised to have an exhibition boxing match against a friend and a former sparring partner. Things got out of hand, and Tony got his ass handed to him. After the fight, he starts drinking and goes on a 2-week binger. He goes home and gets into a fight with his wife. She is going to leave, so Tony takes a handful of pills and swallows them. She wants to call an ambulance, but Tony grabbed a gun, and there was a struggle, and the gun went off. This is when things get dark, folks. Warning here. This is when things get really dark. To this day, they don't know who had their finger on the trigger. Tony had swallowed his own puke after taking that, a handful of pills, and was unconscious. It obviously is news all over TV in Finland. He was in poor condition and struggles for life for the first couple of weeks. He is saved but has suffered brain damage. Tony says in an interview he still has no memory of that date or the days prior. He was no longer the Tony of old. His marriage ended and he became depressed. He was charged in the shooting incident and says that he will resign if found guilty of any charges. His story to the judge was that he was working on a role as an SS prison guard at a camp in Porvoo. His role required that he had that gun in his possession. He does resign and he gets a 4-month suspended sentence. He is on disability and his health causes even more depression. He was still drinking like crazy and addicted to painkillers. He starts to lose his psyche especially when he couldn't lift weights like he used to. He would make appearances at bars, and that was all that got him out of the house. People were laughing at him though because he would get drunk in the bars. So he got in debt for the drugs he was buying off of the black market. Drugs were like 50 euros for one pill and were the kinds of drugs that cause hallucinations. So he's completely gone. It's completely out of control at this point. We got Goku who says that gas chamber comparison was crazy. The reporter looked dumbfounded. The reporter looked like she had never heard anything like that. The reporter never heard anything like that in their life. I was like, God damn, Tony, this guy's off the deep end. This guy is out of his mind at this point. So Michael says, coming down the mountain is a lot to handle, and some people would rather end it than become a nobody again. Krister went to Tony's house for his birthday, but he couldn't get in the door. So we see the reenactment and we see him trying to struggle with the door. Is basically got the chain lock on it. He called and Tony didn't answer, so he called the police. They break in and Tony was found dead after shooting himself. We see the news announcement on Finnish TV, and he was 47 years old, so he died so young. His friend notes that Tony said he would rather live a year as a lion than 40 as a mouse. His ex-wife says that she was not surprised and did not shed a tear. God damn! This guy must have been an awful son of a bitch. Even your ex-wife didn't even cry, was not sad. She literally says, and I quote, "He was a piece of shit and burned bridges. He treated people horribly." Some trace it back to his mother and the issues that he had with her. They think his childhood traumas shaped him as an adult. They discuss legacy, and one says he was Ludvig Borga, a non-descriptive heel from Finland who never connected with the audience. Jim Ross says he was an asshole, and that is where I will leave it. In Finland, though, he is seen more as someone that changed politics in Europe. Someone even says that Tony did what he did to change politics in Finland, and it's similar to what Donald Trump has done to change them in the United States, which is not a good thing, folks. When you are compared to Donald Trump and his way of doing politics in the United States of America, that is not a good thing in the least bit. We got a lot of politicians in Europe ran on anti-immigration platforms for the next few years following Tony's surprise win. His ex-wife wants people to know there was a good side, and that is what she fell in love with. But he destroyed himself in every way a person can. So they did end the show saying, if you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide, there is help available. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline provides 24/7 and free confidential support for people in distress, prevention, and crisis resources for you or loved ones. Call 988 and via online chat at 988lifeline.org. And that is episode 2, Ludvig Borga, the Hellraiser from Helsinki. Like I said at the top of the show, I learned a lot. Don't get me wrong. I learned a lot about this individual, but I don't think I really wanted to learn this much about him. My view of Ludvig Borga was basically what Cornette and Jim Ross were saying, that he was very non-descriptive, very not that memorable foreign heel in 1993. He was here and then he was gone. And it seems like for good reason. He wasn't a good person, did not treat the people well around him. You hear what his ex-wife says. Ex-wife was like he was a piece of shit. Like, when the person that was supposed to be the love of your life is saying that, you probably weren't a good person, and you probably weren't a good person to them, and you probably weren't a good person to the people around you if no one you worked with says anything nice about you. I really wish that we could have got like Lex Luger, someone that worked with him closely as his like main rival during his time in WWF. I wish that he could have been a part of this. Other than that, it's just like, eesh. Let's see what you guys got to say. Goku says, the interviewees F him. That's basically what they all said. Yeah. That's basically their description of him. Greg Carter II says, a racist buying drugs off the black market is funny. I see what you did there. Greg Carter II also says, JR was shooting. JR was holding nothing back. He did not care that this man had passed away. He was talking about him like he was right in front of him. He's like, fuck him. He's like, I don't have anything nice to say about him, and I'll just leave it at that. Goku says, Gunther is everything Vince wanted Ludvig Borga to be. And Vince was about to ruin that. So it tells you how much Vince, how well Vince assesses talent. If this is his comparison, we got Power Drive Finisher. He says, no doubt Ludvig Borga is what Vince wants Gunther to be. I love how you changed that around. Yeah. Ludvig Borga is what he was like. He's nothing like Ludvig Borga. Let's have him lose. I want him to lose. You saw the way Vince was, that whole angle that Vince did with, who was it? I think it was R-Truth dressing in on like 4th of July, dressing in the Uncle Sam outfit. And then Gunther came out and beat him up. That was like one of the last angles that Vince did with Gunther. He was so disappointed he wasn't more like Ludvig Borga, not realizing that Gunther is one of the all-time greatest monster foreign heels ever. He had him and he wanted him to be like a nondescript, very not memorable foreign heel instead. Makes sense. It's Vince McMahon. Makes sense. Matthew Rodriguez asks, SP3, do you think that Darkseid needs to do an episode of Speaking Out 2020? They need to do a Speaking Out 2020 episode. They need to do the Saudi Arabia hostage situation from, I think it was 2020 or 2019, which I think it was 2019. That need to do that episode. There's a couple of things that's happened in the last couple of years where even if you don't want to do Speaking Out, you can do each individual, like the people that really got canceled and pushed out of the company. They need to do Alberto Del Rio episode. Because I mean, if you've been in our community long enough, I interviewed Alberto Del Rio, and Alberto Del Rio, he's a character. He has his own history. Everything that happened with Paige, aka Saraya, everything that happened with his ex-wife, with the kidnapping charges and everything. So he can have an episode. David Starr can have an episode. Skid Scala can have an episode. Marty Scurll can have an episode. Joey Ryan needs his own episode. Like, you could break it down. You don't have to do Speaking Out as an overall thing. You can do each of these individual. Velveteen Dream needs his own episode. There's a lot to unpack there. I feel like they would be handicapping themselves. They can get a whole new season. They can go into season 7 of Dark Side of the Ring if they just go through each person who was exposed in the Speaking Out movement and do an episode on them. Oh yeah, Matthew. Ashley Manzaro is an own episode of Dark Side of the Ring. There's a lot. There's so much. Oh, the UK scene. Oh my god. Like, we're coming out with our own episodes here. We just booked season 7 for them, guys. We just booked season 7. Gray Carter II says they need a Dick Murdoch episode. He was a Klan member. Did not know that. Yes, Gray Carter. I just got chills. Yes, that's his own episode. Goku says I think they should do an episode on Andrew Tess Martin. Yeah, that's a sad case, but yeah, and I haven't learned enough about what Tess was doing outside of wrestling, but yeah, that feels like that feels like an episode within itself as well. Chuck Berry's Enzo Amore and how his career went downhill and everything that happened with him. Yeah, that's his own episode as well. We got Power Driver Finisher who says they can do that. Paige Xavier Woods, but it seems out of taste and isolated incident. Yeah, that's just an isolated incident. But Brad Maddox though. Brad Maddox, maybe that's an episode right there. Nephew Rodriguez says, SP3, I love your Wrestle Talk features in the web. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate those kind words. And he says, and I have an idea for that AEW male and female that Paul Heyman would be perfect to manage. Yeah, I just did one on WWE stars that Paul Heyman could manage. A lot of the features that I do with Wrestle Talk is what my editor he basically does like the background stuff, and he sees like what features would get reads like on the internet if it comes up on Google Trends and Discovery, and he basically gives me like what topics he wants me to do the list on. He gives me like the title, like, oh, WWE stars that Paul Heyman could manage, and it's up to me to figure out who belongs on that list and writing the article. That's how it works with Wrestle Talk. But that's a good suggestion. That might be something that maybe I can do for read my stuff over at sportsillustrated.com, si.com, the takedown on SI. I'm over there as well, and I do list over there, so might be something I can do. We got Greg Carter II who says Umaga. That's another sad one though. I loved Umaga. Yeah, Goku. He says I know the one episode that is going to have me in the feels is the upcoming Daphne episode. Yeah, that's going to be a sad one. That's going to be a sad one this season. I might be in tears recapping that one for sure. And Matthew Rodriguez says, hot take, 2 females that would be perfect for Heyman, Mariah May. Hey, if you know like puntins, and after the news of her being a contract year for AEW, you may see Mariah May in WWE sooner rather than later. Maybe she has the opportunity to be with Paul Heyman. And he says the most sense too would be Megan Bayne. Megan Bayne she had like basically the build of Brock Lesnar. They were kind of speed rushing it, and it felt like too soon. I know Jimmy McElram said that on AE Ramble. It felt like too soon to give her the matchup because Toni Storm is so hot right now that you don't want to take the AEW Women's World Championship off of her. So it feels like too soon to do the Megan Bayne matchup. I think if Megan Bayne would have been like the winner of the Owen and then faced Timeless Toni Storm, that probably would have been the better route to go. And then she could have beat her at All in Texas. But we'll see what AEW does with Megan Bayne because she's a star. She's a star in every way possible. And then we this says they should do a whole season on all the lies Hogan tells. Yeah, Hogan could be a 2-part episode. That's for sure. Thank you guys. I like those suggestions. We need to do that every week. We're going to do another episode for Dark Side of the Ring, episode 3, Big Van Vader. So I hope you guys join me on Sunday. We're going to be doing that on Sunday, probably around 3:05 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. So join me and J News for that. And we'll come up with more options for Dark Side of the Ring episodes. So save a couple in the chamber, and we'll highlight those on Sunday. He says, how about Heroes of Wrestling? That's a good one. Heroes of Wrestling. That is a good one. All right, guys, we made it to the end. So final call for super chat donations. Haven't got any yet, and it's okay. I've been highlighting as many of their comments as possible, but always appreciate the support. If you have something, if you're feeling generous, you want to get back to what we do here, send a super chat donation because we're about to sign off here, but I also want to hear from you guys. So of course, for the episode, out of 10, what did you give the show? Did you give this episode a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle? Who was your MVP? Who was your LVP? Doesn't have to be exactly with the story. It can be out of the talking heads as well, which I'm going to do here. But for Dark Side of the Ring, in Season 6, Episode 2, Ludvig Borga, Hellraiser from Helsinki. Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle in 3, 2, 1. Thumbs up from me. Like I said, I love my Dark Side of the Rings where I know the subject they're talking about, but I don't know a lot of the information. And boy, oh boy, was Ludvig Borga a fascinating life to go over and cover. So I'm going to give this episode an 8.5 out of 10. I laughed. I was disturbed at times. So I see you guys are high on the episode too. I'm going to give it an 8.5. This was a good episode of Dark Side of the Ring. Very fascinating, very interesting, very intriguing. Had me on the edge of my seat learning a lot of stuff about Ludvig Borga here. We got Goku, who gives it a 9 out of 10. What a crazy story. Yes, I was also appalled as well. Power Driver Finisher, he says 9 out of 10 review. Thank you so much for that. Greg Carter II, who says 9 out of 10. My MVP, I'm going to go with the talking heads here, and I'm going to go with Jim Ross. I thought that Jim Ross provided a lot. Jim Cornette had the funniest line of it, and I see a lot of y'all are agreeing. Jim Cornette is definitely a MVP candidate, but Jim Ross and his being completely disgusted with Ludvig Borga pop me just a little bit more than everybody else here. So I'm going to give it to JR specifically. I've given Jim Cornette plenty of MVPs for Dark Side of the Ring, but this one I'm going to give it to Jim Ross. LVP for the show, it's got to be Ludvig Borga, right? It's got to be Ludvig Borga. It's Ludvig Borga, for sure. Yes, everybody's saying it. It's Goku says LVP is 100% Ludvig Borga. He also says MVP was Jim Cornette and the exit only tattoo. He also says Jim Ross is the MVP as well. We got Power Drive Finisher. He says JR and Corny. Oh, yes. Honorable mention to Scott Norton. Scott Norton deserves some MVP love as well. Greg Carter II says MVP Jim Cornette and Jim Ross, LVP Ludvig Borga, and I mean, I can't argue with that. It's got to be Ludvig Borga, one of the biggest LVPs of this season. This is an LVP. He had a fascinating life, but also an LVP life. So, RIP or not, to each his own. But that has been our Dark Side of the Ring Season 6, Episode 2, Ludvig Borga, Hellraiser from Helsinki review. Appreciate y'all for joining me live in the chat. If you're watching us on demand, let us know what you thought about this episode of Dark Side of the Ring. What did you think about our review here? Let us know in the comments down below. I love to interact with you guys over in the comments as well, so let us know right there. And of course, if you haven't already, please show your appreciation in the best way possible. Drop the thumbs up, share this video with all your wrestling fans, friends, and family, and hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to stay notified, because like I said before, we'll be back on Sunday. We will be here at 3:05 p.m. Eastern Time for our Dark Side of the Ring Season 6, Episode 3, Big Van Vader review. And this one, I will say, my little cliffhanger, my little preview for this is my favorite episode of Season 6 so far. Out of the first 3 episodes, this was my favorite, and I watched it with my missus. So I'll give you my missus' thoughts as well as my thoughts. I'll be joined live by Jane News on Sunday at 3:05 p.m. Eastern Time. So join us for that. Appreciate y'all if you joined us live. Of course, we'll be back live tomorrow as always for the True Heel Heat flagship podcast talking about this week in pro wrestling. So join us tomorrow at 11:05 a.m. Eastern Time, the flagship podcast, our penultimate flagship podcast before WrestleMania 41 week. I'll be giving a lot of information about our week of of content coming up for next week for WrestleMania week, which starts on Monday. We're going to have a jam-packed week. Monday, we're doing an NJPW Windy City Riot review, and we'll be doing a preview of Progress's show in Las Vegas. So that will probably be a pre-recorded preview, but we're going to have a bunch of content for WrestleMania week starting on Monday. So join us for that, but I'll be here tomorrow for the flagship podcast. It'll be myself, True Jaw Josh, and Top Guy JJ talking about AEW Dynasty and the fallout from the ending of that show. We'll be talking about the Charlotte Flair, Tiffany Stratton shoot promo fallout and all the news that has come out this week in regards to that. We'll be talking about Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Dynamite, Collision, NJPW, Windy City Riot, and TNA Impact, so you get your recap of this week in wrestling. So join us live for the flagship tomorrow, and join us on Sunday for Dark Side of the Ring Season 6, Episode 3 review for Big Van Vader. In the meantime, between time, check out all the great content we got here on the channel right now, like Rated Raw Review, Episode 62. Now You Owe Me a Favor. Check out AE Ramble from yesterday. We did it for the Hangman 193 with me and Jimmy Macaram. Check out our Windy City Riot preview. Checking out before tonight's show. Check that out as well with me and Jay News breaking down the card for tonight's show in Chicago, Illinois. And premiering today, later today, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we got an exclusive interview for True Heels, BTR, Between the Ropes, with TNA superstar, TNA wrestling star, Leon Slater. We talked all about his upcoming matchup in Ultimate X. He's going to be in Ultimate X at TNA Rebellion. And also, if you want to watch it early, hit the join button for $1 a month. Become a member, because you can watch our interview with Leon Slater right now before everybody else. But if you're not, check it out, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's debuting today. But that is all from me for today. Join me live if you like to see my content even more. Subscribe to the True Heel Heat Sports and Entertainment channel, because I'll be live in 1 hour, 3:05 p.m. Eastern Time for our Power Book 3, Raising Kanan, Season 6 episode. I'm saying Season 6. That's Dark Side of the Ring. Season 4 episodes 4 and 5 review. We'll be doing an episode 6 review later this week as well, so the content never sleeps from us at True Hill Heat. But this has been our Dark Side of the Ring Season 6, Episode 2, Ludvig Borga, Hellraiser from Helsinki review. We are signing off until next time.